Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Morning. Thank you for inviting me.
You've been in the country to talk about cultural diplomacy between the two countries. Tell me more, and why is it so important at this time?
Well, I think I've been in my present job about 3 years, and when I joined the British Council, I thought, who are our most important relationships with? And I thought, well, one of them must be South Africa. And I felt that the relationship was quite quiet. There wasn't much traffic in arts and culture with certain things going on, but it wasn't in the forefront of people's minds in the UK, certainly, and maybe here. And I just thought we ought to do something about that, given the important historical and contemporary links. So we started to try and put something in place to address that, not in the sense of a traditional year of culture, but a much more long-lasting, more sustainable, more profound exchange of ideas, knowledge and learning.
Let's talk about that exchange very quickly because, I mean, from a culture perspective, from a culture and arts perspective, I mean, it's undeniable in terms of just the history and the amount of work your country has done and the influence it's had on the world. How do we find a balance in that relationship to make sure that as in a country you share what you've learned and the pioneering stuff that you've done around the world, but you're also willing to learn from South Africa?
Yeah, well, that's very important to us in all our cultural relations work and arts work. I obviously look after the arts portfolio, which is a portfolio that the work can go much further than other areas of discussion like politics and trade. It's much more profound. It's about people's souls and their imaginations and their inspiration. And I don't think you work anymore in cultural relations just by projecting your own culture at somebody else and expecting them to nod and say how lovely. You have to engage in an exchange of ideas, and that's the way people are working now. Young people are sampling arts and culture from different parts of the world. They're learning as well as actually developing their own creativity, and that comes through a more mutual and reciprocal approach, and that's very important to us. So we know that, as you say, we've got certain skills in the creative sector and the management of institutions and so on. But of course, there's masses of creativity in the youth of probably every country, and certainly in South Africa, in some of the contemporary industries, the digital media, digital arts, fashion design, dance, theatre. I mean, we're developing for example, a new writing from South Africa in partnership with the Royal Court Theatre in London. So we give a platform for young South African playwrights to develop their craft in partnership with a UK theatre, and that work will be shown in both countries. So that's the kind of approach we're adopting, and it's fundamental to our work these days.
How do we make sure that these partnerships that you're talking about, and I know we can get tied up at the diplomatic level, but how do we make sure that we actually get that down and filter it down to the youth in the two respective countries who seem to thrive under these kind of exchanges?
Yes, indeed. Well, we took a decision early on to focus very much on the South African seasons, particularly with our work in South Africa, on the 18 to 35 generation, because if we can feel we can make a connection, a real exciting connection with them and connect them with youth in the UK, that we can, obviously the effect is longer lasting than if you're starting with people in their 60s. That's not to exclude them, but and certainly, you know, the advent of digital media and all of that makes it easier to do that. And so through art forms like photography, for example, which is something that all of us do, probably not very well, but it's a kind of art form that can encourage people to look at their environment, take artistic photographs of it, question the content about social deprivation, poverty, public space, the environment and so on. So an art form like that starts a debate, and so you get people talking online or face to face, and you get them engaged with the notion that art isn't something out there that you go to when you've got nothing else to do, but it's part of everyday life, it's part of everybody's experiences, and everybody too has a spark of creativity that they can develop. So It's about developing personality. It's about also a lot of it today is about developing skills for employment. And that's the same in the UK as I'm sure is in South Africa, that the creative sector has a huge potential for economic growth, much more than the traditional manufacturing industries. And so encouraging creativity in education to start with, which is vitally important, and then saying to people, look, you don't need to be a banker or an accountant or an estate agent. There are jobs available, particularly if you work on your own or in small industries, in the creative sector. And so there's a link to the arts, the imagination, making a living, lifestyle, everything. It covers the whole gamut of human experience.
Mr. Graham Sheffield, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us from our Cape Town studio. That was the British Council Director of Arts talking about the SA UK seasons. Let's go.